Brothers and sisters, I want to ask you a sobering question. What are you living for? Not what do you say you're living for, but what does your life actually show? When you wake up, when you spend your time, when you dream at night, what is your heart pursuing? I fear that many of us are living for things that will not last. Many are spending their energy chasing comfort, security, and personal success, thinking these will bring joy. But the Bible warns us, what does it profit a man to gain the whole world and forfeit his soul? Mark 8:36. My heart is heavy because I see so many people wasting their lives. They are not doing evil things, but they are doing things that do not matter in the light of eternity. And I want to plead with you today, do not waste your life. You were not created for trivial pursuits. Your existence is not an accident. Nor are you here to simply chase personal success, wealth, or comfort. The ultimate reason you were made is to reflect the glory of God. The Bible declares in Isaiah 43:7, everyone who is called by my name, whom I created for my glory, whom I formed and made. This means that every breath you take, every talent you possess, and every opportunity before you is meant to magnify the greatness of God. God's glory is not just a theological concept. It is the very fabric of existence. It is his infinite beauty, majesty, and holiness displayed in creation, in redemption, and in our lives. From the vast galaxies to the smallest flower, all of creation declares his handiwork, Psalm 19:01. But among all of creation, humans alone are made in the image of God, Genesis 1:27, uniquely designed to reflect his character, love, and righteousness. Yet humanity has turned away from this purpose. Sin has blinded people to their true calling, leading them to seek their own glory rather than God's. People chase after power, influence, and material gain, believing these things will bring meaning. But Solomon, the wisest man who ever lived, after experiencing all the riches and pleasures the world had to offer, concluded that everything apart from God is vanity and chasing after the wind. Ecclesiastes 1:14. No amount of worldly success can satisfy the soul because we were designed for something far greater. To live for God's glory means that in everything, our work, our relationships, our ambitions, God is first. It means that our lives are not about making a name for ourselves, but making his name great. Jesus himself lived this way, declaring in John 17:04, I have glorified you on earth, having accomplished the work that you gave me to do. His entire life was about pointing people to the Father. And as followers of Christ, this is our calling as well. Living for God's glory is not a burden, but the deepest source of joy. When we align our lives with his purpose, we experience the fulfillment our souls crave. It is only in surrendering to his will that we truly find life. The more we reflect his love, his truth, and his power, the more we step into the life we were meant to live. The world constantly tells us that the ultimate goal in life is comfort and success. From an early age, we are taught to work hard, climb the ladder, accumulate wealth, and secure a life of ease. Society equates success with financial stability, social recognition, and personal achievement. But what if this very pursuit is the greatest danger to our souls? What if, in striving for comfort and success, we forfeit the deeper purpose for which we were created? Jesus issues a sobering warning in Mark 8:36. For what does it profit a man to gain the whole world and forfeit his soul? This is the great tragedy. People who spend their entire lives chasing things that do not last, only to realize too late that they have wasted the only life they were given. The problem is not wealth or achievement itself, but the way these things often take the place of God in our hearts. Comfort breeds complacency. Success often leads to self-sufficiency, making us forget our need for God. The rich young ruler in Matthew 19:16-22 is a tragic example. He had everything, wealth, morality, and a respected position. Yet, when Jesus told him to sell his possessions and follow him, he walked away sorrowful. Why? Because his comfort and success had a stronger hold on his heart than his desire to follow God. The things he owned ultimately owned him. Many people live with the illusion that once they reach a certain level of comfort, they will have peace. But comfort does not satisfy the soul, it only numbs it. People who spend their lives pursuing wealth, luxury, and personal achievements often find themselves restless and empty. The more they gain, the more they realize that no amount of money or status can fill the void inside. The danger of living for comfort and success is that it keeps us from stepping into the radical obedience God calls us to. The Bible is filled with stories of men and women who left behind their security to follow God's will. Abraham leaving his homeland, Moses forsaking Pharaoh's palace, the disciples abandoning their careers to follow Jesus. They understood that true life is not found in safety or success, but in surrendering to God's greater plan. At the end of life, the question will not be how much we accumulated, but how well we lived for God's glory. The safest place to be is in His will, even if it requires sacrifice. True success is not found in earthly comforts, but in a life wholly surrendered to Christ. The world teaches us to play it safe. It tells us to secure our future, build stability, and avoid unnecessary risks. But the call of Christ is radically different. Jesus does not ask for partial devotion. He calls for total surrender. He said in Matthew 16:25, "For whoever would save his life will lose it, but whoever loses his life for my sake will find it." To follow Christ fully is to risk everything for Him, and though it may seem costly, it is eternally worth it. Throughout history, men and women of faith have embraced this truth. Abraham left his homeland, trusting God for a promise he could not yet see. Moses risked his position in Pharaoh's palace to identify with God's people. The apostles abandoned their careers and comforts to follow Jesus, ultimately suffering persecution, imprisonment, and even death. Why? Because they understood that what they gained in Christ was far greater than anything they left behind. One of the most powerful examples is the missionary Jim Elliot, who gave his life reaching the unreached tribes of Ecuador. He famously said, "He is no fool who gives what he cannot keep to gain what he cannot lose." This is the perspective of a life fully surrendered to God, realizing that everything we try to hold on to in this world is temporary, but what we do for Christ lasts forever. Risking everything for Christ does not always mean moving to a foreign land or facing martyrdom. Sometimes it means stepping out in faith when God calls us beyond our comfort zone. It may be sharing the gospel when we fear rejection, giving sacrificially when it feels like we have little, or obeying God's direction even when it does not make sense. Every act of obedience requires risk, but every risk taken for Christ is rewarded with something greater: intimacy with God, eternal impact, and the joy of knowing we are living for something that truly matters. Many hesitate to surrender because they fear loss, but what is truly lost when we give our lives to Christ? The things of this world are fleeting, money, status, comfort, none of it lasts. But when we invest in God's kingdom, we store up treasures in heaven that can never fade. Matthew 6:20. In the end, the only life wasted is the one lived in fear and self-preservation. The greatest adventure, the deepest joy, and the richest reward are found in giving everything for the one who gave everything for us. Life is fleeting. No matter how young or strong we feel, time moves forward relentlessly. James 4:14 reminds us, what is your life? For you are a mist that appears for a little time and then vanishes. In the grand scheme of eternity, our time on earth is like a vapor, brief, passing, and unable to be reclaimed once it is gone. Yet, how often do we live as if we have endless years ahead of us? We plan, we delay, we assume there will always be more time to seek God, to serve Him, to make our lives count. But the truth is, time is short and eternity is long. We fill our schedules with temporary things. Career goals, entertainment, financial security, often giving little thought to what will truly last. Many people live as if this life is all there is, storing up wealth, chasing personal success, and investing in things that will perish. But Jesus warns us in Matthew 6:19-20, do not lay up for yourselves treasures on earth, where moth and rust destroy and where thieves break in and steal, but lay up for yourselves treasures in heaven. What we do with our time matters because eternity is real. Every person will one day stand before God and give an account of their life. Romans 14:12. This world is not our final destination. It is a preparation for what comes next. Eternity is not a distant concept. It is the ultimate reality. The choices we make now determine how we will spend forever. Will we invest in things that fade, or will we live with an eternal mindset, seeking God's kingdom above all else? The great tragedy is not death itself, but a wasted life. The enemy deceives people into believing they have plenty of time, that they can always seek God later. But later is never guaranteed. Psalm 90:12 teaches us to pray. Teach us to number our days, that we may gain a heart of wisdom. Wisdom is recognizing that every moment is a gift and every opportunity to live for Christ is precious. God calls us to live with urgency, not in fear, but with purpose. He has given us a limited time on this earth, and what we do with it echoes for eternity. Now is the time to seek Him, to serve others, to share the gospel, and to build His kingdom. When this life ends, only what we have done for Christ will truly remain. True fulfillment is not found in personal success, comfort, or worldly achievements. It is found in complete obedience to God. Many people spend their lives searching for meaning, chasing wealth, relationships, recognition, only to feel empty inside. But Jesus makes it clear, whoever loses his life for my sake will find it, Matthew 16:25. The paradox of faith is that real joy and purpose are not found in holding on to our own plans, but in surrendering fully to God's will. Radical obedience to God is the key to a life of deep fulfillment. Obedience to God is not about following rules. It is about aligning our lives with His perfect plan. God created us for Himself, and only in Him can we be truly satisfied. The world promises happiness through temporary pleasures, but these things never last. Solomon, the wealthiest and wisest king, had everything, power, riches, and luxury. Yet he declared in Ecclesiastes 2:11, then I considered all that my hands had done and the toil I had expended in doing it, and behold, all was vanity and a striving after wind. No amount of personal success can satisfy the soul like walking in obedience to God. Radical obedience requires trust. Often God calls us to follow him even when we do not understand. Abraham was called to leave his home for an unknown land, Genesis 12:01. Moses had to confront Pharaoh despite his fears, Exodus 3:10 and 12. The disciples abandoned their nets to follow Jesus, Matthew 4:19, 20. None of them had all the details, but they trusted God, and their obedience led to a life of divine purpose and impact. Many hesitate to obey God because they fear sacrifice. They think surrendering to God will mean losing control, missing out, or suffering hardship. But obedience to God is not loss, it is gain. Jesus said in John 10:10, I came that they may have life and have it abundantly. The abundant life is not about wealth or ease, but about living in the fullness of God's presence, power, and peace. A life of obedience leads to deep joy, unshakable peace, and eternal impact. Those who obey God walk in his favor, experience his guidance, and see him work through them in ways they never imagined. The greatest adventure and the deepest satisfaction come not from doing what we want, but from fully surrendering to the one who knows us best and loves us most. Your life is not an accident. It is a gift from God. Every breath you take, every opportunity you receive, and every talent you possess has been entrusted to you for a purpose. Psalm 139:16 says, all the days ordained for me were written in your book before one of them came to be. This means that your life is intentional and what you do with it matters. The question is not whether your life has value, it does, but rather, how will you steward this gift that God has given you? Stewardship is about responsibility and faithfulness. In Matthew 25:14-30, Jesus tells the parable of the talents, where a master entrusts his servants with different amounts of money before going on a journey. Two of them invest and multiply what they were given, but one, out of fear, buries his talent in the ground. When the master returns, he rewards the faithful stewards, but rebukes the one who wasted his opportunity. This parable is not just about money, it is about life. God has given you time, gifts, and opportunities, not to waste, but to use for his glory. Many people squander their lives on things that do not matter. They chase material wealth, seek personal recognition, and pursue temporary pleasures, believing these things will bring fulfillment. But in the end, they realize that worldly success cannot satisfy the soul. Ecclesiastes 12:13 sums it up. Fear God and keep his commandments, for this is the whole duty of man. The only way to live wisely is to live with eternity in mind. Stewarding your life wisely means using your time, talents, and resources to honor God. It means loving others, serving with humility, and making decisions that align with his will. It means being intentional with how you spend your days, because life is short and every moment is an opportunity to glorify him. Ephesians 5:15-16 urges us, look carefully then how you walk, not as unwise, but as wise, making the best use of the time, because the days are evil.